Welcome back to another exciting episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled, the podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And as always, I remain your host, Arlington. Today's guest is Laura Van Walmer. Laura, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Darlington. It's great to be here.
All right, thank you so much. So, our guest for today is a best-selling author and former Double D editor and creative mind behind the Class of 74, a serialized fiction podcast that transports listeners back to the early 1970s, a world before cell phones, social media, personal computers, or even answering machines. Set in a Connecticut suburb outside New York City, the series blends coming of age drama, humor, and historical events into a story that feels both nostalgic and, remarkably, and remarkably real. Once again, Laura, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I love the description of my show. It sounds so good.
Thank you so much, Hannah. And
I'm
also,
yeah.
yeah, go on. So I say also, Laura's own
No,
story is
you go
just
ahead. You can start.
okay. Her story is just so compelling that after surviving a devastating head-on collision that left her with life-threatening injuries and cognitive challenges,
Yeah, you see these scars? Yeah.
she feared she
I'm
might never
looking at
write.
Darlington through a camera, and now I'm like half stripping. I'm showing you my around my neck. There's all these scars where my chest was crushed in this crash. Yeah, it was a car crash, and I was riding high, Darlington. I was a full-time novelist. I actually did other things too, but I had published 14 novels, and I was on my way to the airport. I was going to Los Angeles to do something very glamorous, and this drunk driver, I'm sure you guys have them over there too, this drunk driver went the wrong way through the tunnel on the highway. So he hit me head on at like 60 miles an hour. And I woke up a month later. And the injuries, they were bad, but eventually, I healed as best I could. Everything was rearranged a little, like my face. But I had to realize that I had had brain injuries, because my head had gotten all pounded into the car, and I had a hard time accepting that I wasn't what I was. And then when I tried to write another novel, excuse me, then I found that I wasn't what I was. I couldn't do it. And a lot of people tried to help me. And the doctors just said, well, it just takes time, because when your head gets banged up like that, all the circuitry breaks, like electrical wiring. If you tear it all out, the lights aren't going to go on the same way they used to. But what's great about our bodies is that automatically our bodies start trying to heal itself, and our brain starts finding new connectors, and it can take a long time. I was very, very lucky because a lot of people thought that I wasn't going to come out of it being mentally sound at all. They had, in fact, told my other half to maybe think about preparing a place in an institution to put me in case I was a vegetable. And so none of that happened, okay? So that was the good part. And then the bad part was I couldn't write a novel. And I just got really, really sad for a long time. And I tried to do other things. And it just wasn't happening. One of the good things, though, during my recovery is I started listening to podcasts because, to be honest, I was very lonely. I didn't want to see anybody because I was all banged up. I wasn't who I used to be. And, when you work very hard to become successful, it was my dream come true to be a published novelist. and to travel the country promoting my work and to be in bookstores. And I would do readings, and I had a big voice that resonated. I never had any problem with my voice carrying. This is not it. This is what I call my ventilator voice from being kept on a ventilator for too long when it starts doing damage to your vocal cords. And so there's that ego, you know, there's self-esteem that has you, believing in yourself. You're a good person. You try to keep a good, orderly direction in your life. But then there's that ego, right? The one that wants to be the big shot, you know, and to have it all sewn up, be successful, make a lot of money, be famous, all that stuff. And suddenly, all that was gone. And I didn't have a way to make a living anymore. And it was all very upsetting. So to say that I gained some humility, to say the least, I needed an attitude adjustment. I realize now, looking back. And so I was very sad. And then I had my 50th high school reunion. I'm very old, Darlington, by the way. I'm 70 years old. And
70 years old. Well, I said you're
I
70.
know.
You look so young to me,
Yes,
honestly.
Yeah, you're the man. Yes, you're my favorite interviewer ever. Yeah, it's all in the lighting, dear. It's all in the lighting.
I don't think so.
But it's also...
No, I don't think it's all in the lighting.
It's also...
I know what I can see.
Well, it's who's inside you. It's the spirit, the life force in you, and the accident had not killed that in me. But I was very sad, and I didn't want to go to my reunion because I don't look the way I used to. And my classmates were so proud of me when I was a published writer because they had remembered in high school I used to read stories to them all the time. I was a real pain in the neck. So when I actually became a published writer, they were all very proud of me. And, I just didn't want to go back because I wasn't the same. I wasn't, big shot. And nobody could hear me at the reunion dinner because this voice doesn't carry. That's why I'm using a microphone and headphones. And I went home and I was really sad. And my other half looked at me, who's been listening to me complain for 10 years, feeling sorry for myself, who said, Laura, why don't you write a story for your classmates and read it to them as a podcast? Because then when the microphone, they'll be able to hear you. You love podcasts. Why don't you try that? And it was like somebody turned the lights on because I did love podcasts and I did love reading my stories to my classmates. So I immediately got inspired and I thought, well, what would anyone like to listen to more than a story about them, right? I thought, I'm going to write a story about us, what it was like when we were in high school. Not exactly. I mean, like in fiction, when you write novels, you don't copy exactly people from real life. You take, characteristics that are memorable from many, many different people. And when you write novels or you're creating a story, what happens is that you as the author start to think of something, of a character. And in the beginning, it might be based on somebody in real life, but if you do your job right, the character becomes their own person. They become so real in your mind. They, walk and talk. They do whatever they want to do. And I think most novelists will tell you that when you're really into writing good fiction, you're forgetting all about the real world. You're up here in your head. And your job as a writer is to take you, Darlington, and show you the words and bring you into my head to see what I'm looking at and what I'm listening to. And that's all the storytelling is to draw you in and do that. So anyway, I sat down and I started writing. I mean, I hadn't tried to write fiction for years because I was so upset that I couldn't. And guess what? I could write in short bursts. I could write, I said, we'll just start on the first day of high school. How awful that day was. And I started out, the main protagonist, the star of the series is a girl named Cynthia. And Cynthia has a lot of me in her, but she's not me. She has grown into her own character. And so she runs off and does whatever she wants. And I just write it down. And my episodes are about 20 pages long. That's about a half hour each week. And I could do that. I mean, the beginning, actually, the first episode was like an hour. I mean, it just went on and on and on because I was so excited about the whole project. But Darlington, what happened was that my classmates were listening, but then other people started to listen. And they got into it because I don't know, you have soap operas in Nigeria, don't you? On
Yeah, yes.
TV, yeah. And they're very popular. There have always been that format of characters living in their own little world. And every week you come back or every day and come back for the next installment of the story, is very popular. And it goes back to Victorian times. And I loved writing it. And then with the microphone, I could make up for the deficiencies in my voice. My voice box is all messed up. But I was able to read it and people like it. They like my voice. They like my ventilator voice. And they started tuning in. And so now all kinds of people are listening. And I'm still writing about high school. But what's fun for me is that going back, I get to see what was really happening at that time. America was still in the Vietnam War, and there were musically, there was huge things happening because the Beatles had just broken up. So each Beatle was releasing their first solo album. Ringo, George, John, and John Lennon had just moved to New York City. The week that we started high school, he and Yoko Ono moved to New York. And there were just all these real world things happening, which seemed fun to bring it into the podcast. So what's happened, there are a lot of people who are interested in the period of the early 70s, because they're listening to the story and they're saying, everybody seems to be smoking. And yeah, everybody smoked. And we still had ads for cigarettes on TV. And, or they would say, man, I mean, nobody's wearing seatbelts. And it's like, no, we didn't wear seatbelts in those days. And, people are like, there's no cell phones. And nope, all we had were landlines with wires, right? Darlington, we didn't even have answering machines yet. So if I called your house and you weren't home, it just rang. If you were gone for 2 months, the phone rang for 2 months and no one would ever know where you were. It's just the way it was. So from a worldview, things were very different. Yet from a student view of being like 15, a lot is the same. A lot of feelings are universal. When we were 15 back then, we were nervous about how we looked, just like 15-year-olds are nervous about how they look now, And kids were worried if they were popular, do people like them, or could they be good at a sport, or, like we used to have a gym class where we were supposed to go out and play soccer, which, well, you call it football, we call it soccer. Um, we would go out there and you'd be tortured because you wondered if someone would pick you to be on your team. Well, guess what? That hasn't changed. Young people growing up, so that's what all these episodes are about. Who likes who, you know, who broke up with who, what are you going to wear to the dance? And, some kids have a lot of money and some kids don't have any money and they're trying to put an outfit together, and those things haven't changed. So people are enjoying it. But I must say, a lot of my friends, their grandkids listen to it with them and they say, "You got to be kidding. You couldn't be gay back then. You couldn't be a homosexual." And their grandfather looks at them and said, "No, it didn't exist when we were in high school. Nobody said a word. Everybody was in the closet, and they're like, "You're kidding." And they go, "No, things were different back then." But it was a very exciting period, Darlington, for America because we had just come through sort of the Black liberation in the 60s, where there had been Martin Luther King leading demonstrations and protests and raising awareness of what was going on down south that people in the North didn't even know about. And it was incredible. It was very heady times because suddenly, kids like me, we were the first generation brought up to believe that all Americans were created equal. In fact, that all people were created equal. It didn't matter what color you were. It didn't matter what your religion was, that all people were created equal. And right now, we have a temperament in America that is absolutely ghastly and the most unchristian way to be. But we won't get we won't get me on my soapbox about America today. But back when the class of 74 took place, these young people absolutely accepted everybody as equal. It was just gay people didn't exist. But in the first couple episodes of the class of 74, the first Black student arrives at Cynthia's all-white high school, and that's a big deal. And this poor kid, he thinks he's been dropped. He's like, "I got to talk to Dad. Does he even know what this town is like?" And everybody's all excited. And there had been loans invented, student loans, and suddenly any young person could get a higher education. And that hadn't been true before. So suddenly, when I got out of school, the people I was competing for with jobs were of every color and every religion. It was wonderful. And of course, women's lib had kicked in. And when I was a kid, Darlington, the train going into New York, 98% of it were men going into New York to work. They were actually white men going into work in New York. By the time of when, let's say, I was 30, that number had changed, that 45% of the people on the train were women and minorities, meaning they were Black or Hispanic or they were Asian or whatever. The world was changing quickly. And that was tremendously exciting because you saw it in our music, you saw it in our movies, you saw it in our novels, that the world was changing to a much better world. And that I love about the class of 74, that it's reminding people of the lessons we learned that it seems like right now the country is forgetting. And everybody better start remembering that everybody's equal, or, this is not normal how the America's running right now. It just isn't.
Okay. Now, what's one important thing you learned by writing fiction?
Fiction. Wait, can you say that again?
one important thing that you learned from writing fiction.
Oh, gosh. Okay. What have I learned? That anything's possible, but that you have to make things believable.
And
That things that happen in real life. Sorry.
I used to wonder,
Well, no,
your creativity,
because
your creativity, where does it come from?
where does my what come from?
Your creativity.
It comes from wanting out,
What
out
does
of
that?
where we are.
Escaping. Is that?
Creativity, well, it started, my mom started me. So any of you who have little kids, listen to this story. When I was little, when she was cooking in the kitchen, she would tear out a picture out of a magazine and ask me to tell her a story about what was going on in it. And that started me. Like, you mean I could just make up a story? And then when she would read me a book, and I'd say, well, you mean I could make up a book? I could make up a story, and that was so cool. And anybody out there who wants to write a novel, I'll give you a hint, have your hero want something in the worst way and have the whole story be about how he can't have it. But then at the end, he earns it and he gets it, and it's a happy ending. Well, if you do that, you have a bestseller. That's what I learned from writing. But creativity is, I feel the older I get, creativity is being in touch with a higher power, a sense of the Almighty. Please tell me you believe in God.
I'm a strong believer in God, Laura. I cannot do anything without
Oh,
God. And I love the Bible. I love
good,
reading the scripture. Ah,
good. Because, Darlington, being a creator, being creative is like being a God, seeing through God's eyes from way up on high, everything that's going on. And you create new things. You create things of beauty. Painters. I'm always jealous of painters and people who could build things, like architects and people who danced well and could, all of that's creative. And where does it come from? I think it comes from God. I think it is being in touch with your spiritual center. I think that's what creativity is. Um, and when we're not in touch with that, that's when we get very upset and very cranky. um, I think a sense of higher power and a sense of spirituality that runs through the world is very important for anyone who wants to create anything. And creating a podcast is an act of creativity too. So I was trying to explain to you, Darlington, because I want to tell your listeners, look, support Darlington. Go to wherever you listen to his podcast and rate him and say something nice, like cool podcast. Doesn't matter what it is, just say something, because you are the creator of the podcast. You select the guests, you select the questions, and this is your creative endeavor. It may not seem like that at the beginning, but each show is another page of your big story. And that's very exciting. And I think all people are creative in some ways. And I think when they're in touch with it, they're more in touch with who they were meant to be, who God intended them to be. And some people's creativity is like cooking and stuff. It's not me, just writing. And that's because my mother started me when I was little. Really. Thanks,
okay.
Mom.
So, thanks, Mom. So, Laura, do you think creativity can be learned? Like, if I want to be a fiction writer now, because there's one time I tried writing fiction, but it was difficult for me to imagine the things because
Anything.
I studied about fiction, how they describe some certain events like it's happening at that moment. So I tried to write fiction and I found out that I was having like a creative block. So do you think
Oh,
creativity is something that I can
yeah.
learn?
We all do. We all
So
have
Laura,
that same
Laura,
block.
Laura, can you teach me how to write fiction?
Absolutely, I can. Okay, let us start. First of all, you're the first person who has to be interested in what you're doing. Okay? So I wrote my first novel because I couldn't find a book that had the plot I wanted to read. That's why I wrote it. And when you sit down, we have all these preconceived notions of, well, you have to be very literary, or the story has to go A, B, C, D. Well, guess what? The story has to interest you. So, right off the bat, I would start off by making something happen in the first sentence, right? You'll see that a lot of people have a block. So, what do? It's like the car came through the living room window. Somebody just crashed through your living room window? Well, you've started a story. Let's go and see where it goes. What kind of car is it? Who's in that car? Who's driving that car? Oh, it happens to be a beautiful young woman. You know, be a fiction writer. Think of something. Just get something on paper, because fiction is the art of revision. You've got to write something, though, to be able to revise. So the most important thing is to get something down. And the only way I know to get people writing is to make something happen on the first page. I always think about, there's a very famous novel in American literature called Tom Sawyer. And Mark Twain, the guy who wrote it, talked about not knowing where to start. So the first line is, Tom, Tom. And it's some old lady yelling for Tom, who happens to be her grandson. Like, where are you, Tom? And there's something so riveting about that first line, because you instantly want to know, well, who's Tom? What's going on? That kind of thing. So let's think of a first line for your novel, Darlington. Think of an event. He couldn't believe it. It was the winning lottery number. There's a
Okay,
story.
thank you, thank you. So,
He won $1 million. He won $1 million. That's the first line of your novel, Darlington. I hand
I
it off
definitely
to
want to
you.
win a 1 million. Yeah, but Adara, saying it right now, it seems so easy because if you have been writing fiction for so a long time, it's easy for you,
It's hard
but it's
work.
not
Yeah.
easy for me. Yeah, so I think
Well,
it's coming easy for you, but
no, 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 no. Okay, that's the other thing. You are somebody who follows the rules generally. I can tell. And it can be very hard for people to let go of all the rules that we follow in our real lives, because we get embarrassed in front of ourselves when we start writing things that, your mother wouldn't approve of, or your friend, or the police, or somebody. But it is a process of self-hypnosis, writing fiction, because you're gradually leaving this world and you're going away to where the story's happening. And when that story starts to happen, you write it down and you try to keep up. Because if you let yourself go and just follow it, you won't be able to write fast enough. And then you're going to say, oh, this makes no sense. This is stupid. Why am I doing this? Well, everybody says that. Everybody has that censor that says, you can't write fiction. Why are you even trying? And then you tell yourself, I'm not going to show this to anybody until I'm ready. You're going to give yourself the time and the space. You're not going to read it to anybody. You're not going to ask their opinion. You're just going to stick with you and what you have on that piece of paper, at least for a while, and figure out what the story is. Because that's the thing. It will take you forever as you're wandering. Let yourself wander. Well, what's he going to do with this $1 million? Is he going to tell somebody he has $1 million? Or is he going to go out and buy the flashiest car? There's a million decisions to make about your story. And you'll start making decisions, and then you'll think, no, 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 I don't even like that. In fact, I want to change his name. In fact, I want to change where he is. Well, that's okay because it's your story and you can change as much as you want. A novel, a story does not just come out of you perfect. It doesn't. It's awkward. It's messy. It makes no sense. And the revision is when you bring order to the story, when characters' names stop changing, when characters, the way they speak, become more distinct in your own mind. Because until you get to know those characters, you don't even know how they talk yet. And I'm telling you, Darlington, when they come alive in your mind, you will know it. You'll get like a thunk in your stomach and go, my God, this is it. This is it. I like this guy. I'm going to give this guy everything he wants, or I'm going to torture this guy and make every nightmare come true. Like a beautiful girl shows up at his door and she steals all his money, right? Who knows what the plot is? But just get something down on the paper. And if you can't, you get bogged down in describing something, skip it, move on, come back to that place. Don't worry about it. Go on to the next event that is interesting to you. Just go on. Let new characters walk into your story, because that will happen. That you'll have a character and you'll think, well, I don't know, this person doesn't seem like a very good friend. And then you think, well, this guy's got to have more than one friend. In fact, I want to have a whole bunch of friends. That opens up lots of decisions and possible paths. But you want to afford yourself, excuse me, my voice starts to go. All these possibilities keep opening up. And you're going to feel like, well, I don't know. I can't make that decision now. Then don't. Just keep going. Find the next piece of action. Now, some people are historical novelists. They write a story based on history because they find the structure of history, the real dates, and what happened very helpful in structuring their plot. In other words, they take a history and then they create a character to react to what's going on. So the plot is really what's happening in history. And then you've created a character to go back to re-experience that piece of history and react to it. And that's fun too. Everybody is different how they write, but I do know this. A dear friend of mine wrote a piece for a magazine called Writer's Digest, and it was called Don't Let Your Mother Read Over Your Shoulder. And it was an article for first-time fiction writers. And it was saying, don't look at the writing through other people's eyes because you'll get so self-conscious you won't be able to move. And writing fiction is about freedom, temporary freedom. It gives you the freedom to do whatever the heck you want, to see whoever you want, go wherever you want. But then that window is over and real life intrudes and you can't write anymore because you're distracted. And that is something else I want to share with you as Darlington, the fiction writer. Understand that when you write fiction, the same thing you use to write with, that emotional energy, is the same emotional energy that people take from you when they talk to you. In other words, you could write a scene if you don't answer your phone. Every time you talk to somebody else, you're giving away that emotional energy, the energy of life. And it's hard enough to imagine all this stuff in your head, But if you're wiped out emotionally, you're not going to be able to write. So a lot of people, it takes experimentation to realize that sometimes it's just the structure of your life that is preventing you from writing fiction because it's so disruptive and so regulated, and you have so many rules that you're following. It's hard to give yourself the freedom in your imagination to go off wherever you want to go. Practice. It's practice, practice, practice.
Okay, Laura.
Yeah,
So I
no,
think
yeah,
it will
yeah.
it will be very,
You're starting to laugh
yeah. I think
because
it will be
you
very,
know I'm right.
yeah.
You
But
know
I
I'm
don't think I
right.
can get all this in one sitting. I think I will need a regular conversation with you. Is it possible for us to have that?
Okay,
Yeah.
sure,
So can I reach out to you anytime and have regular conversation on this?
absolutely. Just email me. You've got
Okay.
my
Thank you
email,
so much.
right? And
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah. I got
set
your
up
email.
a. But be careful about the letting people read what you've written because it will discourage you. They won't get it. I'm telling you.
Okay.
They
Okay.
can't imagine what the finished fiction's going to be like. Later they can read it, but not until you've like been alone with it and you've read it out loud to yourself. And then you laugh and you say, oh God, this line is terrible. Nobody talks like that because you started to develop your ear and you know your character now and you know what they should sound like. And you
Okay.
just let yourself go.
All right, Laura. So
So
talking about your own fiction novel, what do you hope readers take away from it when they finish reading it?
I I think life is very short. And I think that being creative and stories and songs and music and love, loving people, loving friends, all of this is all part of what I'm trying to do. And I'm just very grateful I'm alive to see myself writing again. And I know I could write a novel now. I know that my brain's healed enough that I could do it. But I don't know if I want to because I love podcasting. I love talking to people. It's fun. Because that's really all I ever wanted to do as a kid was just read stories to people. But that had to be my stories because I was interested in them. So that's
Okay,
it.
Laura, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking out your time to talk about fiction writing. Honestly, I'm so
Right.
happy because I feel like right now I can begin my journey with you by my side, with you guiding me. I can start my fiction journey. Thank you so much, Laura. And
Absolutely.
I really appreciate you
Absolutely.
taking out your time
And
to
then
be
we'll
here.
do a podcast on it.
Okay, okay,
All right, darling.
definitely.
You just email me when you're ready. Okay,
All
hon.
right, all right, all right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and my audience as well.
It's
Make sure.
exciting because wonder if your podcast ends up being to begin writing fiction to start. You know how many listeners you'd have? Oh my gosh. Be
So I think
fun.
I think I think I can go on to that part. I just need to start writing fiction for
Yeah.
myself so that I can know how
And be
to.
embarrassed. Yes. And you'll
Okay.
be embarrassed. You'll be embarrassed, but it's okay. It's just you. It's just you and God. God likes it. Trust me.
Okay, Laura, thank you so much, and my audience
You're
as well.
using
Thank
what
you guys
he
so
gave
much.
you.
My creativity, right?
All right, dear.
Okay. So thank you so much. Make sure to share this episode. If this episode is speaking to you and is telling you something, share it to someone out there who might need to hear this. As you guys know, we have Laura again. But before we have her again, she has to teach me how to write fiction. Then I'll come back and teach you guys how to write fiction. Thank you
Yes.
also.
We'll all do it together.
Okay. Thank you all so much, and I will see you guys again on the next episode on the show. Bye, guys. Thank you, Laura. Have a wonderful day. So, Laura, for my audience who want to reach out to you, I'm sure some of them want to reach out to you. I just forget. How can they reach out to you?
Well, if they want to listen to the podcast, they can go to Class of 74, that's a 74, podcast.com. Or to see the novels that I've written, it's lauravanwarmer.net. Just put Laura Van something or other, 74, and then everything will come up in Google. all kinds of places. But you can listen to the podcast on the site, which is fun.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I'll text you and reach out to you as well. Bye, Laura.
Okay, good. Bye bye.